Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Welcome to episode 6 of the Player Diff podcast. Today I'm joined again by my beautiful co host, Lucinder. And today we're joined by really come on man, you ruined the intro, man. I had a
No, I
good
hate how
flow
you
there,
had to
man.
emphasize Lucinda.
Every time it's Lucinder, yeah, because no one knows how to pronounce your name. So I gotta make it a point, right? I
Now I
gotta
have to show
I gotta
Piehat the
show you the
respect.
respect, right? For sure. Today we're joined by a amazing guest, Piehat. Thank you for doing this.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you so much, Brian and Laxinder, for inviting me to. Dude, I need to
So
find. Don't worry. At the time span of this recording, I'm gonna find a lot of ways to butcher
Yeah,
your name. So don't worry.
yeah.
it's all good.
How are you
It's all
guys
good. It's all
doing?
good.
Thank you so much for inviting me here.
Yeah, thank you for being here, man. We've been trying to do this for a while now, right?
It's
you
it's been hard, that life has had its issues. A lot of things we haven't been checking up, so I'm glad we finally got a time that we all the three of us would sit down and actually talk for once because it's been a while and haven't and I like talking and haven't really been doing that. So you know,
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I remember that you were actually the first person that we asked, and you were the first person to say yes to actually come on the show. And like we were talking about before we even started this recording, like life is tough all over the world right now, especially with COVID. It's hard for everyone. So I'm just happy that we could actually find some time and sit down and talk. So thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
yeah, it's been a while. I remember when you guys presented me the project. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. I think that we need more projects like this and more people that actually do this type of content because we don't really have that a lot. We have all this speaking on the hand of how you interact with someone as a stream as a TFT player, like you see him on a stream or you see him like they're interacting with chat and all that. But there aren't really many good moments to actually sit down and either talk to them or listen to them in a podcast or a video about who they really are, how they really approach the game, or on the other different games, or a lot of things that you can really talk about. So like I think it's
Yeah,
very valuable.
absolutely. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's exactly the type of thing that I'm trying to do here because when I started my TFT journey, I was watching tons of YouTube videos. Like I was just trying to grab every resource I could. And I would always stumble into like interviews, right? Like Gangly does an amazing podcast. I don't know if you call it a podcast, like an interview, right?
Yeah, interview.
Giant Slayer's doing something really cool. Um, DOA is doing something really cool, right? But what I found is that like none of it really scratched that itch I have as a gamer into
Hmm.
like really understanding like how do people think about the game? How does this person think about the game? And how do they really like defragment it in their minds? Because I find as I talk to more and more gamers and just like in general in my life, like we have this tendency to take the skills of whatever game we learned first. So for me it's like for me really the first game that I really like sunk my teeth down into uh it's kind of embarrassing but believe it or not it was Maple Story, right? But or throwback, right? But see the difference though is that I come from a theory crafting background, right? So
Hmm.
I was actually one of the few people who was grinding data and trying to figure out like, okay, what's the frame data, what's the weapon data, what's the multiplier damage, how do we min max, how do we get the most out of this boss fight, how do we get the most out of this kit. And like it was obscenely silly to take such a lighthearted game so seriously, but that's how I started. And ever since then, I've been trying to defrag every game I've learned through this like theory crafting mindset, right? And I find that that applies pretty much across the board with most gamers. Like some people will come from StarCraft and then they'll start using that lens that they learned StarCraft from and trying to understand every other game that follows that.
The silence. I was in the middle of your monologue. I'm like very
Yeah,
invested
that's
in it.
okay. That's all right.
Yeah. I mean, in my case, if you're really trying to dig up like the deep roots of what makes me a gamer or what digs at, I would say I have no idea. Like the first game actually sunk my teeth in was I mean, my first game of all time, which is Pikmin, which is very simple, half adventure, half real time strategy type of game. Uh, you had like this captain called Captain Olimar, who is for a Nintendo GameCube, by the way. So you're this captain of this spaceship, and your spaceship is struck by a meteorite, and you fall down to planet Earth, and like all the ship parts all fly away, and like you're kind of stuck on the planet, and you only have enough oxygen for like 30 days. So you have 30 days to collect like 30 ship parts, but you're alone on this world, a lot of bugs and monsters and all that. So while he's wandering around, he finds like these tiny little creatures called Pikmin, and Olimar has to learn how to raise them, how to command them. They work together, and it's a very cool game, and I have a lot of fun memories with it. But like the thing that actually struck me the most was along as the time passed by and I started being better with the game. I liked, okay, how fast I can beat this game, how quickly I can actually perform this all these tasks, and I constantly play the game. Like one time I played beat it in 30 days, and then in 28, and then in 20 or something, until at point I beat it in 9, which was the world record at the time, and I was like 12 years old, so like, that was really cool.
Wow, so you started in speedrunning.
Yeah, speedrun is something I really liked. Either that, and I used to speedrun Super Mario Sunshine, a couple other games. It was really just for hobby, basically. I liked it, and not only that, I think besides gaming, other things that actually I can bring a lot of other things of my life into gaming as a whole, and vice versa, because the games have because all one thing I do in my lifetime overall is like both create things and actually have a lot of decision making, because my area field of work has a lot of that, has a lot of creative choices, and have a lot of how you can work as a team, or how you can command a team, because imagine you're a director of a film, you have to like command a lot of people. So all those things, the passion I had, the speed running things I liked, and the pure concept of building stories and adventures, like all commanded together into basically who I am as a gamer. All the games I like, because I don't only like one genre, which is a lot of something that a lot of people do. Like they fixate on one genre. I can't speak. I'm sorry. Like
No, you're good.
that
Yeah, you're
really
good.
clicks, and like, okay, I'm only playing shooters, or I'm only playing adventure or RPGs or something like that. But in my case, I've been like bouncing around a lot of things, because they all tick different boxes for me, and this it's something that I really like about gaming.
Yeah, that's exactly like the type of conversations that I'm actually trying to have, because I'm very similar in the sense that my whole life has really just been the skills that I've been learning in games and just applying it to life, right? Like I think as a gamer, you become really good at identifying problems and trying to figure out ways how to solve them. And not only is it just problem solving, but it's also the skill of actually like learning, right? I always found that like I'm the type of person that I will eight 9 out of 10 times when I play a new game, I will probably like glitch something in the tutorial zone because I'm just trying everything, right? I'm just trying to like just smash everything. And I feel like that's worked out in my life in a lot of ways where before I really start to like try and solve a problem, the first thing I'm doing is I'm analyzing like, okay, what are my inputs? What are my capabilities? What are the restrictions I have? What are the rules I have? And that's really like taken me pretty far. And I'm actually interested in going into that if you want to.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me, because I was reading a lot of the game design theory, like all this year, basically, because it's something I'm interested in getting into. And there's this book, I don't remember the author right now, which is called The Fun of Game Design or something like that, which was analyzing a lot of what makes us entertain ourselves playing games. And there was this quote that I like a lot, which is, "Learning is the fun, learning is the drug. Therefore, the prowess of a good game is teaching you all the things it has to offer, because before you get bored and you leave the game," which is basically what happens, because what you're saying, what I'm saying, like what I've lived is, you like to a game so much, and you delve right a lot in delve really deep into it, and you either optimize the fun out of the game as a very popular code that both Lux and I like, or you just say, okay, this isn't worth the value, the effort value of learning this, and you like they're very like different places to go, but they all suffer the same. They all walk through the same line of learning and knowledge and how you develop yourself in the game. It's very cool. I think that can apply to both TFT and my life and all other things I've enjoyed and been addicted to. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. My favorite book actually is called Homo Ludens.
Mm,
If you're familiar with like
yeah.
Ludens Echo, the item from League, that's what it refers to. At least that's what I believe it refers to, which makes the most sense if you're a
And
game developer. But
well, maybe.
yeah, maybe I hope so. But Homo Ludens is a anthropologic study of games and culture. Are you familiar with the book?
The book and the theory behind it, and what is a normal ludens as a whole, and how do we, as a species, have grown because of playing and interacting.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, so it's like the main premise of the book really is like play is existence,
Mhm.
right? Play is existence, and what's funny is like uh, a lot of people think that games are very not serious, right? But in my opinion, games are the most serious thing that we can possibly have. The most serious thing, right? It's funny when you have especially like the older generation, right? Like you have people who discredit people who play video games as a hobby for fun or professionally, and then at the same time, they're the people who get the most maddest. That's not proper grammar, right? They get the angriest when like somebody's not driving properly on the road, like they're not staying in between the lines, or somebody's walking on the wrong side of the sidewalk. It's like these are all small, like little mini games that we have throughout our lives, and they're exactly the same thing as other games, right? It's exactly the same. It's there are some rules, follow the fucking rules, and if you don't, I'm gonna flame you.
I, it has to, a lot of be a lot of it has a lot of I cannot order this sentence. It's very hard. As you can tell, English is not my first language, so
It's all good. I
a lot
appreciate
of
you coming to do
a
this in
lot of
English.
this has to do with the fact that video games are a very new genre of games, or and very new genre of art, basically.
Mhm.
Because what happened with cinema probably happened like in the late 20th century, when late 19th century, when the Lumieres actually showed up the first like film. People probably were like, okay, why do you do this? Why are you? What's the point in this until it became like the seventh art? So like, it
Right.
has it's very a lot of the, you have to close the gap between generations. It's probably gonna close as time goes on and people actually start giving it the value it deserves, because we've come from why are you playing games to games should be moderated and they are because they are too violent, to where we are now. So like people are dumb, people are don't like what they cannot understand, and what they don't think is what isn't the thing that they've grown up with. So it happens.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite quotes is the funny thing about time is that the non-believers will die eventually.
Hmm.
So, so I mean, you're right. It's probably only a matter of time. But historically speaking, like there have been instances in our history where games have been deeply interwoven within the culture. And it's funny because the closest thing we have to that is sports.
Hmm.
But even now, we're starting to see sports, at least in Canada here, and maybe like throughout the United States. Like sports is slowly starting to take a backseat now. It's slowly starting to fade out. But like in Greece, like the Colosseum, which was a game, right? A very cruel game to pit people against other people and kill each other, but it was a game nonetheless, right? That was very heavily interwoven within the culture, right? And I guess now, like when it comes to what's available, like with the choices we have and all the freedom that we have now, it's hard for one culture to like really sink its teeth into, one specific game or one specific sport. But I do believe like fundamentally we will come full circle, and games will become heavily integrated within our culture once again. I I don't know what that's gonna look like, right? Because it's definitely gonna not gonna look like the Coliseum, but it'll be
Hopefully.
something, I'm sure.
I hope it
Yes.
isn't. But isn't like streaming basically a virtual coliseum? Because you're putting you're basically, if you think about it, streaming is a prison because you're forcing this guy to be, or this girl, or this person being on live, on a live show with a lot of people watching, and let's just say TFT. You're being forced to play TFT because people are there to watch you to do that, and you have to suffer for that. Let's say you're on a very tilted spree and things are going sour. You have to continue streaming if this is your if this is your actual job, and people are gonna still be there cheering or making fun of you. So like, there's a lot of sadism basically, and this
Yeah.
virtual coliseums, let's
Yeah,
say it like that.
imagine
What's
you were
up,
like put in that
Alexandra?
situation and you play bad. Oh my lord! Like in the Colosseum, people didn't
Yeah.
really know who you were, right? But now people know who you were on this on stream. It's like, okay, this guy's playing bad. We'll just flame the shit out of them. It's like, oh god.
Yeah, I still remember my one of my first streams I did back on my in the process of qualifying for Worlds. We can probably talk about this later in
Yeah, we'll get
in
to
this
that.
conversation.
We'll get to all of that.
But I remember the first time I streamed after making it to top 32. I played so bad that people actually like. I had clips of me playing poorly, and people like were like smack talking. I'm like, okay, so this is how it feels.
Yeah.
It's look, you bring up a really good point, and if anything, like it might be worse, right? Like it might be worse than a whole Coliseum like booing you, because now people have anonymity, right?
Hmm.
Now you can hide behind avatars and you could be really nasty, right? And that's like that's something that I'm also coming to terms with as we develop this podcast more. It's like I'm finding myself reminding myself like, oh, I'm gonna lose my anonymity. Like right now, you and I have our webcams and we're just we have video just for the sake of the conversation, but we haven't put out any video yet for the show, and eventually we will, right?
Hmm.
And that's something that I'm struggling with. It's like, huh, people are actually going to associate my face now with my online Discord tag, and eventually that's going to trace back to like real me, like my actual identity in life. And it's like now I feel like I kind of have to watch my back per se. You know what I mean? Like you especially with I don't want to like go out and say it, but like especially with cancel culture, it's like you never know when somebody just might have a really bad day and they're feeling a little spiteful and they're just gonna try and come for you. And they have nothing to lose because they're gonna hide behind an avatar, right? So it's like when it comes to screaming, it's like people can say anything, and they do, you know, and they do, and they're not afraid to, right?
I mean, it really depends. I mean, in your case, saying like this podcast as an example, yeah. I mean, basically, whenever you do anything, any content, you're losing your privacy a little bit, and basically, our privacy is like it's layers that slowly get thrown apart, depending on what you do. For example, like I remember that there was this person I don't really like that person that we had, but he said being a person is the least private thing to do. I don't have privacy, and it's very true because being a public image and public person, which is what you're doing, what I'm doing is when it's happened. It happens, but in your case, it's like you're being the face of this content thing, saga, or whatever you want to call it. And sometimes it's good to actually show yourself and give a face to a project and not only be in a couple of like random voices on the internet with a couple of tags and avatars and all that. And I don't know, it's something like I've learned to handle basically. I usually haven't really minded because I usually am the same in Discord, for example, that I am in real life. And the moment I showed my face on camera once, like, okay, I this is me. I have nothing to hide. Like it's you just learn to how to handle it, and it's a little hard because, if, for example, if you check Piehat on Google in Spanish probably, you'll see news of me going because of the World Qualifier, and my full name's there. And I had interviews in both in the Latin American Riot Games channel and on the Riot Games channel because of the Worlds. I've showed my face and how I tilted, for example, against millions of not millions, thousands of people. So like you learn to handle it, I guess, because anything that is art related, you're gonna have to struggle with this and learn how to handle it at some point. And this is one of those arts, so like, you'll get there. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's like I know it's I almost see it as like the price,
Mm,
right? Like if you're gonna do anything worthwhile, if you're going to do anything that's remotely crazy, I kind of see it as like the analogy I like to give all the time is putting your sword down in the sand and dying on it,
mm,
right? And I feel like for the goals that we're trying to achieve with this podcast, I'm happy to do it, right? I'm happy to do it. And I think what you've done as well, right, is like that's also the price to pay because people want to know who you are. Like who's Piehat? Who's this crazy player who came out of nowhere, right? And it's not that I think that people shouldn't do it. It's just I think people should be also very conscious of what
oh yeah.
comes with it, right?
Anytime you show anything of your private life or not internet life per se, you're on you're on the there's this chance that it can backfire with anything you publish basically. So anything you publish on social media or anything you do, it probably happens on the other boring jobs like the other things that aren't like this. I don't know, don't work there. But probably can also work there. Let's say you send a bad email by accident. Like, okay, you have to face the repercussions of that. Face your actions. Like, it happens. You cannot live in full privacy, especially when you grow up. So there's not this like aura or like there's this barrier that you can always have have to protect you. It's gonna happen eventually because just the fact of going to an interview basically is like, okay, I have to show myself, I have to face this interviewer or this boss who's gonna test me to see if I'm fit to do this. Like, it can be applied to a lot of things in life, and it happens, I
For
guess.
sure. I think with an interview though, it's kind of like it's just that person and that person like it's just the interviewer and maybe another bunch of other
Oh yeah,
people, but they're not gonna go on Twitter and like flame the crap out of you
I
afterwards.
mean,
Like, oh my
okay,
god, that was such a
that's
bad
fair.
interview,
That's
right?
fair.
But I see exactly what you're saying. Which also like makes me think about because we were talking about like balance and TFT beforehand. Like it makes me think
Mhm.
about like what goes through Mort Dog's head. You know what I mean? Because he's really become like this figurehead for this game, and you and I both know like people will not hesitate to lash out at him, and he's almost become like this meme within the community. Like I'm so conflicted with like get Mort Dogged because like I think it's funny, but at the same time like I kind of feel bad too. It's like you really put your neck out on the line as like the lead dev for this game, and the community's just gonna like feed you to the sharks. You know what I mean? They're gonna go any which way about it.
I mean, it was.
So
Continue if you
no, go
want.
ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Like, it's gonna happen with any elite designer of any popular game, basically. Like, especially when you show up your face, because for example, a lot of Nintendo games, you just say, "Oh, it's Nintendo's fault," because people don't usually take the time to read the who is in charge. Like, for example, in this game, or like
Oh,
I
League of
don't have
Legends,
another example
Riot.
right now, but
It's
he
Riot's fault.
showed
It's
himself.
always Riot's fault. Fuck Riot. You know what I mean? It's never
Yeah,
like
yeah, you can
directed
say
to a
it's Riot's
person,
fault,
but like
but
unlike TFT, because Modok decided to step up and
mhm.
be that like icon kind of thing for TFT.
Well,
Yeah.
Uh, and I mean,
yeah, well, I mean, even take a look at Certainly T, right? Like Certainly T was the guy who developed Yasuo,
yeah,
right? Right? Like he made a lot of champions that a lot of people fucking hated, but it pushed the game forward in a lot of ways that most people don't want to admit, right? Like it pushed game design it pushed champion design in League of Legends in a lot of ways. Like before, the champions were just very like, even still, like look at like a Mumu's kit. You know what I mean? Like it's so basic, right? We didn't have that level of complexity, and thanks to him now we got like these crazy ass kits that like you actually have to like spend 30 minutes to actually understand. And don't get me started on Aphelios. I actually don't know if he had a hand in Aphelios, but even still, like if we go back to the root of this, it's like what I think Mortdog is doing is really cool,
Mhm.
right? Like he's human, and he
Yeah.
also has a team behind him, so it's not always 100% his fault. He's not always 100% responsible. And again, I don't know. I haven't talked to him. I don't know his full job description or what he actually is entailed in doing or what's not, right? But I think what he's doing is really cool, right? And I think the world is watching. I think regardless of how this pans out, I think other game developers are going to be reading this in the textbooks to come, right? Because that's a real hard question. Is like, as a game developer, do you become public, right? Do you become the public head, or do you just kind of like have that anonymity and you hide behind the company or the entity, right? Because like you're right. Like it's like people flame Nintendo. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's just Nintendo's fault, right? It's not like one specific guy, right?
I mean, it really depends because there's a lot of like speedrun communities that are very tied up to the developers. For example, they work hand in hand. It's very cool to see. But yeah, basically, what more suffers is the side effects of showing yourself to the world. And like, I think it's very respectable what he's doing or what he has been doing since like I don't remember since I've paid attention since set free. So I'm gonna say set free. I don't know if he did it before, but yeah, he showed up and actually stood up to everyone. Actually, tried to explain things. The fact that the post-mortem videos that he does, I think, are amazing for
Yeah, I
people
agree.
who
I
aren't
agree.
designers because they can see the thought process behind someone who is a designer and understand. Okay, if I messed up here. I did a good thing here, and it's gonna happen. And a lot of flame has happened to him. That's true. And there's a lot, and of course, as you say, he's human. There's a lot of reactions that he has had are, of course, a side effect of all the things that he has suffered because of being the face of the game and being a game that has a very wide and very open audience that actually has no problem in talking shit and saying in Twitter or in whatever. Okay, this is bad because of A, B, C, D, D, E, and it wears you down. It drags you down. It's very hard, and especially now because he's. I don't think he's the lead director of the set. I think he's Static or someone else. I don't know. And people are still gonna point the finger at him, and I guess it just happens when you just brand yourself as the face of TFT. Even though it's good to have a face, it also has its like its downsides. So I feel bad for him.
Yeah, same. Like I think what he's doing is amazing, right? What he's doing is amazing, and unfortunately, what comes with that is what we all know, right? It's all this flame. It's people making emotes out of him for a Discord server. It's like the cursed mortar mode is like I think that's super funny, but
Oh,
at the
that's
same
funny.
time, I feel kind of bad, right? But like
Like,
I think what he's doing is great. I think the world's watching. I think this is going to set precedent for many game developers down the road, right? And I think as a community, we need to be very aware of that, right? We're talking before we started recording. We are talking about like professionalism, right? We were talking about just basic human courtesy, right? And I'm a very big believer that for the world to take us seriously, right? For even Riot to take TFT more seriously and actually put more funding into it, right? We need to take ourselves a little bit more seriously.
no, I thought that you were still gonna continue because we're
That's fine.
because we're on the cameras and he was like making the motion like he was gonna say another sentence. So like,
I
okay,
gave it a nudge. I gave
I'm
the nudge
waiting
and smile.
the. Yeah, it's hard because at some points it can get a little closer to cyberbullying, and that's something you don't really want because you're being cyberbullied by a lot of people, but by things that sometimes are really your fault, and that's something that we need to understand.
I think it crosses the line of cyberbullying
Yeah.
many times, right? Like the funny thing is
People
that
don't
like
see
I don't know if you've
people
noticed
don't
because
see it
Hmm?
as
sorry, go
cyberbullying
ahead, Lex. What did you
because
say?
they don't have a relation with more dog. You know what I mean? And I think that yeah,
It's
Yeah.
not even
yeah.
just a mort
But
dog.
like
It's
in
just
this
in
case,
general to
right?
people, right?
It's the people
Like
don't see it as cyberbullying because they don't have a connection with the other person. To them, they just a rando on the screen, right? They don't really care about their feelings. They don't care who they are. They don't care where
Mm.
their background is, where they come from. They can just lash out because they don't know who they are, right? That's the difference when you compare that to actual cyberbullying, where you actually direct at someone that you know, right? You know what I mean? Like cyberbullying usually, right, entails
Hmm.
they both know each other and they decided to push forward and bully from one person to another, right? But in this case, people just don't see it because they don't make that correlation. Like, oh, just because I don't know them doesn't mean I'm not bullying them. You know what I mean? And that's the issue here.
yeah, no,
Mhm.
I'd agree. Yeah, you got a really good point. You got a really good point there, and I think even if it doesn't cross over into cyberbullying, I still think we as a community need to hold ourselves to higher standards, right? Like just I thought about this the other day, right? It's like within the TFT Discord, Piehat, I don't know how active you are in there. Like I see you sometimes, but I know you're
The
typically
rat server.
in the cat server, right?
Used to be
But
very active. I
in
used to
the
be
rat
very
server,
active, but not anymore.
so within the TFT server, right?
Hmm.
For those of you who haven't joined us, it's discord.gg/teamfighttactics. Within the TFT Discord server, right? It's like I try to spread positivity just because I like it, right? Like I just like to compliment people and like just say nice things. And the funny thing is like people really are like they call me weird. You know, like people treat me really weird and it's like I was thinking about it the other day. It's like, wow, how like negative is the general community for somebody to come in and say nice things to be a little weird, right? And I'm like,
I
just
mean,
think about it for a second, right? It's like, huh, like what I think I'm doing isn't even like crazy. It's just like nice compliments. Like someone will say like, "Oh, this is nice," and I'll be like, "You're nice," and I'll just reply, and that's it, right? And it's like for me to be like way off here in the cold, and it's like where do we actually sit in terms of like the general attitude of the server? And I think the mods do a great job, by the way, right? Like I don't think this is anyone's fault. I think this is just like a general player
Oh, the player
base
base are toxic.
mentality.
it also has to be, yeah, it has to be how you also perceive the positivity. For example, if someone who I don't know in Discord is like shows up and it's very nice. Probably my first thing is like either A, he's very wholesome, or B, what is he up to? So what are they
Yeah,
up?
yeah, like you might be a troll. Like he's
Like
just
I have this
yeah.
based on life experience. I have this barrier against people who are randomly nice, and I probably can see you. I understand that feeling of the perception of not being the guy who does the nice things as but as the guy who's watching someone do the nice things. But I always like have a little resilience on
But
that.
like it comes
Go
down
ahead,
to I
Max.
feel like because of the community are bred to be to that everybody's a mean person. So when suddenly a nice person comes along, they're like, hold on a second. What's your motives? You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like they're not used to hang out with nice people, right? So when they do come along, they're like the brain fries and be like, okay, this person's kind of sus. You know what I mean? Like, what are they trying to do? What trying to get out of me? Kind of stuff like that, right? So that's the problem here. It's because they're so used to all the mean stuff being thrown out like that. Like it's the norm. So then when it's like a nice person or like a genuinely nice person comes along, they're like, they cannot relate to it. There's like, it does, they don't understand and they feel weird about it. You know what I mean? That's why like some people just cannot take compliments, right? They feel weird about compliments, but then they can take infinite insults. You know what I mean? Like it shouldn't be like that, right? That's what our community has come down to. But then this is not just TFT community, right? This is like majority of games. Like a lot of games right now are like, how should I say this? Revolved around this toxic cycle kind of thing, right? Where like they're just toxicity just being thrown out at each other. You know what I mean? They're just like a bunch of like narcissistic egos playing the game. That's what it feels like sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm better than you. You know what I mean? Like, and then they just like fucking throw out insults why they're better than you, and then how you're like dog shit or something like that. You know what I mean? It's like a lot of games I've played, it's just like that. And I think it's just because there's like an anonymity. Is that how do you pronounce that? Fucking ESL over here, but anonymity.
Anonymity, yeah.
Okay, yeah, but it's because
So-
of that. It's because of that, because
No,
there's no
you got a
human
point.
connections with the
Yeah.
people, right? It's actually like in League of Legends. I'm just gonna bring League of Legends up because it's like it's super toxic community because you don't know the other players. You cannot connect to the other players, right? Like I feel like as soon as you bring in voice chat, there's like a human connection coming along, right? Because all you're seeing them is just text on a screen. That's like, who the fuck is this guy? And I don't care about the feelings. Just say what kind of shit. But as soon as you hear them talk, it clicks. It's like, oh shit, they're actually another person on the other side. You know what I mean? And then through tone of voice, you can actually tell what's going on, right? You can tell like, oh, if a person's frustrated or if a person actually felt bad for like a play they made, or like felt sad because of something that someone else said in chat. You know what I mean? Like you can hear that. And that's when people clicked in. It's like, okay, we're actually humans. We actually have to be nice to each other, right? People think that bringing in voice chat might be bring out even more toxicity in League. I kind of sort of disagree because I feel like it brings that human to human connection. Because to your friends, right, you don't insult them as hard as you sometimes insult people online. You know what I mean? Because they're there. But like at the same time, to your friend, you can throw this stuff out because you're friends, right? You understand each other, kind of thing. But like you wouldn't say that to a random person you meet on the streets. You know, you wouldn't just randomly give them shit on the streets for no reason, right? That's what happens in games, right? Like you don't see them as a person anymore. You know what I mean? They just an avatar, or you see them as a champion, or like just a picture with a name underneath. You know what I mean? Like they're not human to you anymore, and that's the sad part, right? And that's what happens in a lot of games because you just don't have that human to human connection. And I feel like they should incorporate that.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, I don't think you're wrong at all, right? Like, I think that's just general gamer culture, right? Like, I like it makes me think of like the 12-year-old on Xbox Live. You know what I mean? Like that 12-year-old kid who's playing Call of Duty and he comes on and he just talks like all this smack. And like the sad part is when you like read about it, right? Doing the right thing is always like this noblistic choice. It's always like the battle versus good versus evil. But personally, like if you ask me, I really do see it that way because it's so easy to give into this evil per se, right? Like it sells so much. You know what I mean? Like it's funny to make fun of someone at someone else's detriment and not have to think about what that does to them, right? Like just take a look at like Tyler One's persona, which really that's what it is, right? It's his persona. Like I've seen, I've listened, I've watched, whatever. I've seen videos of him scrimming when he's not streaming, and he's a completely different person. I've seen clips of him like acting out in day to day when he's not streaming, and he's a completely different person. And it's like I have nothing against the guy, just making it clear for the record, right? Um, this negativity just sells. Like it's so easy to give into it, right? And Piehat, I'm actually like curious to hear about like the competitive scene and what it's like at the higher echelons of play. But maybe we should actually segue into like the real reason why you're here to begin with. So
Yeah, it's been in
before
like 40 minutes. I don't know how long it has.
that's fine. Do you have a time limit, by the way? Do you gotta bounce at any time?
No, I was probably gonna go in like a couple minutes to grab some water because after an hour I probably just ran out of water. So just giving a heads up.
Yeah, no worries. Sounds good. Sounds good. Um, yeah, like before, like let's actually like get into it. And so, without me having to mess up your rap sheet, right?
My rap
How
sheet.
would you introduce? Yeah, how would you introduce yourself to everyone on the podcast?
Actually, I'm curious to see how you would mess up the rap sheet. So you go ahead before I do the boring presentation and fix the issues that you make.
So, what I know from you is that you are a fantastic player and that
Yeah,
you've
so.
qualified for worlds. That's what I know.
Okay. That's something that you're already wrong there. I think I'm so sorry. Okay, I'm just kidding. Uh, okay, so let's do the presentation. I guess doing on a little more formal, boring. So, again, as you have said, my name is Piehat. I'm from Peru. I'm South America basically, and I'm in TF. Basically, talking about TFT, I play in the LES server. Usually never been like a high challenger player. Usually was GM in every set. And last set I'm like, okay, let's try it out a little bit. Let's try the qualifiers and see where I go. And I happen to end up going the world. So like in TFT background, I've always been like a decent player that likes the game enough to actually mess around, but gets bored on ladder. But somehow one moment he said, okay, let's actually try for a little bit, and I got a little far, so I'm a little happy for that. And there's a lot of other things I would like to present, but I don't know what things in the rap sheet you would like to talk about because I could go on talking about myself for like an hour, and I'm not narcissistic at all. So
No, that's fine. We're here to talk about anything you'd like to talk about, right? We
you're the
do have
host.
some topics prepared, but
You're the host,
I've been
so go ahead. I'll just talk
I've been
away.
enjoying the talk of this flow, right? Um, you mentioned in our initial conversation weeks back, right, that you
Phew.
actually came from Mario Tennis.
Yeah, that's actually a really cool thing to talk to bring up. Back in the day, like way back, like a couple of years back, of course, a long time ago. I used to do two things. I used to run speed runs basically, and because I liked to do that, and I happened to stumble across this Nintendo Switch game called Mario Tennis Aces. So there was this basically a tennis game featuring Mario characters and yada yada yada. You'll basically know the drill by now. It's Mario games.
Fantastic game. I
Yeah,
actually played that game a lot
Mario
with my
games
cousin.
plus sports. So like it's very cool. It's actually very is I like it a lot, and it had a lot of feedback and a lot of support from the developers a little bit. But anyway, so I played this demo and I'm like, okay, I actually really like the game. I'm gonna buy it, and I buy it on day one of release, and I played it. I actually bought the game because I wanted to speedrun the adventure mode. I never speedrun the game, so I started played a little bit, played of ladder, little of our ladder, couple games here and there. I ended up in the Discord of the game, and slowly but surely started making friends there. The South American community as a whole in Mario Tennis Aces back when I was playing, it wasn't really there. Right? A lot of people didn't play, and right now there's a lot of people, but back when I was playing, there weren't a lot, and we had like this regional distribution, basically what you have like NA, LAS, and all that. Like based on where I was geographically, I could only play from Chile up to Florida, basically. So like a lot of people I couldn't play, and a lot of people who played were in upper NA, so like couldn't do much. But I started playing in Discord, had talks, made a lot of friends there, took part of a lot of tourneys, and I ended up being an admin. I was the admin of the place. I used to be a TO, a tournament organizer of the place. We actually did a lot of things together, me and the team, and I happened to be the admin of the place at the time, so it was very cool. I had a lot of talks. I knew a lot of people. I got into a Discord of the Nintendo Treehouse app. It was very cool. Um, and after a while, I think it was like 2019. I think it's like I started pivoting out of that and moved into another different priorities. I got to top 10 in All American. Was very cool. Like the player, like very cool. It was a good achievement of my part. But I didn't think I ever achieved something as much. And at some point, I was like, okay, I've played this game 2 years. I made a lot of things, and I think I'm ready to move on. And I left the place in good terms. I made sure to actually have a lot of good people as admins and moderators. I just left. I dipped the place. I haven't touched the game yet. I still talk with a lot of people. That's basically my first approach on actually being a part of a community. I think it was pretty cool. It was pretty wholesome. I still have a lot of fun memories with the game. A lot of tilt and a lot of laughs. It actually was the first game who made me talk in English, so I have a lot of respect and value for it. If it wasn't for that, I probably wouldn't be here talking in English. So
That's really cool. So you mentioned like top 10,
Yeah.
right?
In I I was considered the whole two. I still up until now I'm still considered the best South American player in the game. But
Wow.
at the time I got to be top 10 in all our community, which was South America, North America, Europe, and I even got invited to a LAN tournament in California, but I couldn't due to visa issues. It's very cool because a lot of Japanese people came, and it was a lot of cool dynamics. I was gonna be able to see my friends, but the visa issues here in South America going to USA during your last not yours because you're Canadian, but during the last president and his politics against people going into the thing. I don't want to get too deep into it,
Yeah, I
but
don't want to get in trouble.
I
Yeah.
don't want to get into trouble. But I think if people here will
It's like we're
understand,
following. I got you. We're
yeah.
following. Yeah, yeah, I got you. So what was like? What was the process? And I guess I'm going to ask you this, and then pretty much come back to it when we move to talking more
Mhm.
about TFT. But I'm curious about like I'm really like just curious to talk about any competitors
Okay.
for any game, because I feel like when no matter what the game is, once you've hit a high enough level of play, it becomes a game of like inches, right? It
Mhm.
becomes a game of like, I'm just trying to get a little bit of an edge. I'm just trying to get a little bit more of an edge. And generally, in most games, it's especially when it comes to like professional sports, we're talking like basketball, football, right? Generally, like everybody knows what their competitor is going to do, or at least try to do, right?
Mhm.
So I'm curious, like, what your progression was like getting to that point.
I'm not sure. I think it was happened very organically. It happened the same with TFT, which was this is a game I enjoy and I enjoy learning. Coming back to the thing that we talked like at the start of the show, I enjoy learning the game, and I actually did and tried my best to learn the game as much as I could, until I got to a point where that learning, like I hit a cap. I admit that I hit a cap, and there are things that I just couldn't understand because I just couldn't learn it, and I learned everything I could at up until that point, and there were people who could do much than me, but I hit my threshold, and I'm like, okay, this is all I could learn. This is I had a lot of fun. I'm just slowly trying to perfect what I already know. And it's basically what I did for like the second year of me playing the game because there's so much you can do in tennis, but there's so little that you can do different. Because at some point you just have to learn how to optimize the angles, the shot selections and all that. It's like very small things and like, so it's basically that same thing happened with TFT. Just mentioning this. It's a game I enjoy. I enjoy learning it, and I happen to be forced to learn the game a little more to compete. And just basically, it's the bad part, or at least how I handle the games, or as a person, is like when you get to a point where you have played the game enough and you know enough of the game, and you think you are like decently skilled, not the best, but decently skilled. Like you can see the mistakes, and I'm someone that gets really upset when they notice their own mistakes. Happen in tennis, happen in TFT, happen in every game I play. So like
Yeah, me too, me too.
it started being a chicken or
But that just comes down to, you
you
know,
can
the path of improvement. No, like if you know your own mistakes, then you know how to
yeah
improve, right? You
yeah
know,
yeah.
you're like you realize that you're learning. You know what I mean? Like you're taking information. It's like, oh, okay, I realized I did this wrong. Okay, now I had to go out and how do I fix this mistake? You know, and stuff like that, right? But then there's a lot of players who don't know what they did wrong. You know what I mean? Or there's a lot of players who like they know what did wrong, but they
Mhm.
don't go the next step to fixing their problems, right? So then it becomes to the point where it's like, is it a bad thing to see your own mistakes? It's like, no, it really isn't, right? It's much better to know your mistakes and not. And that's the big problem here. Like I see a lot of players as a coach, they don't know their mistakes, right? I can point out infinite mistakes. Number two, they know their mistakes, they don't fix it,
Mhm.
right? They'll come back to me over and over and over and over again with the same mistake, same over and over and over again, right? It's either one, they just don't get it, or number two, they don't try to get it. And that's the issue here, right? It's like it's not about not seeing your own mistakes, more about seeing it than fixing it.
Yeah, it's how you handle the information that you receive, because seeing the mistakes very good, of course, but you have to have the discipline and the willpower to overcome them, and you have to have the mental fortitude to do it. It's because it's very hard. It can be very taxing. And on the other side, the people who don't know their mistakes or just are blind enough to that don't want to see the mistakes. It's just basically what it's just a question of what they want with the game or with any project in general, and how much they're willing to invest in it. It happens with everything. So I don't know.
Yeah, I
You
feel
can
like another
correct
thing
me.
when you say some people
Go
just don't see
go
the mistakes.
talk.
Some people fight back. They'd be like, "No, what I did was right," kind of thing. You know what I mean? I how do I say this? I can't find a better one. But I was like that. I was like that with chaos. So I had chaos to watch my VODs, and then there will be times where I try to justify my own reasoning and stuff like that. But then it's not the correct reasoning. You know what I mean? Like a lot of players, no, I think majority of the
Mhm.
players believe what they're doing is right. You know, and that's why they don't see the mistakes, right? Because they think they're doing the right thing and it's not working out. Right. That's why they don't see the mistakes. Or another time is like they did the wrong thing and it worked out. And be like, oh shit, it worked out in this scenario and it's gonna work out later on. I feel like this doesn't just come into TFT, it comes a lot in like everything in life kind of thing. That in that odd chance when you did the wrong thing and the results are there, you think you did the right thing, which isn't the case. Right. And that's what people don't understand. And that's why they need someone else, you know, to come in and be like point in the right direction, say, hey, look, this is the right way. You just got lucky this time.
Yeah, so along those lines, Piehat, I'm warning you right now that I'm probably going to ask you a question. I'm becoming more, I guess, intentional on asking almost every guest. But I'm gonna eventually ask you, how would you teach somebody who's completely new to TFT? But I'm more like really curious about what your mentality is when you're approaching a game, because obviously you've played Mario Tennis at a very high competitive level. You're playing TFT now at a high competitive level. I'm wondering like what's your modality when it comes to like when you arrive at a game, like what do you focus on? How are you learning? How are you gathering information? How are you identifying your own problems? And what's like your logic when you're checking them? As Lux said, right? Sometimes, we have beliefs that something's going to pay off, but it doesn't always happen. So just curious, like what's really walk me through your process.
Oh, I'm incredibly stubborn, so I think probably Lux can know when he gave me a little bit of coaching before Worlds. I'm very stubborn with the things I do. So like I can see that it happens a lot. I don't know. I think my thought process or my logic behind it is how can I learn the game in a way that isn't methodical? Because I'm not a methodical person. I don't think in numbers. I think in words. I think in pictures. How can I manage to learn a game and not do it like by a textbook? And how can I do it in a way that it's enjoyable? And I do it like that. I value much more my fun than learning, at least at the start. And yeah, it's basically how I started with how I do that. And other than that, I'm not really sure.
So give me an example of how that applies to TFT, because I understand the concept, right, of like prioritizing fun and not
Yeah.
making it so tedious like textbook. But what does that look like, or what did that look like for you when you first came to TFT, or as you're approaching new sets?
Uh, Comfort basically. But when I started the game in set two, I was like, okay, I don't understand anything of this. But Shadow and Berserkers, they look fun. So I'm gonna try it and maybe I can learn things with that. And I did, I got to Diamond. It's not really that high, I guess, but it's really a lot for me. And set three, I'm like, okay, what can I do? And I tried to learn things, but I always came back to Mech because Mech Pilot was the most fun I had. And with Mech, I learned a lot. I learned how to lose rig. I learned how to come back with 1 HP. I learned how to scout playing Mech. So like, okay, these things are fun. How can I take this couple of comps, basically speaking in TFT terms, and apply it to my learning process? Or set or 3.5, I really enjoyed cybernetics. How can I do that? How can I do it in a way that is not spamming the games, because I hate spamming the same comp? But how can you do it in a way that, okay, this comp is enjoyable or this unit is enjoyable? I'm learning the basics with that. And then I get to like set 4, because when already knew some of the basics, I didn't know that much. I admit that I was still in the process of like, okay, I have a lot of these options. I don't have one comp. There was no mech, there was no berserker, so I'm like, how can I grab this random unit and make it work? That was my thought process for the entirety of set 4, or at least the bit I played of it. And from set 5, it was like, how can I grab this unit and go level 8 with this? Which was my logic behind all my championship tournaments and all that. But like, there's this concept that I enjoy, which was X comp or B unit or C playstyle, and applying that thing that I enjoy the most to learning the concepts and applying it to learn different units in TFT, because the game is more flexible than people would give it credit for. And basically, it's okay. It's applying it in like those small things that click, and use it to grow as a player. I think that's why I'm struggling a lot with set 5, is because there's nothing that has really clicked with me. And I guess it's gonna come up with time, but I don't know.
So it sounds like you're actually kind of similar to me, where I have this very like theory crafty methodical approach where it's like I will try and take a unit and try and like theorize how am I gonna make that my win condition. Right. It sounds like you're pretty much if you will, like the proverbial bucket of Legos. You're just experimenting with what Legos work with each other and trying to
what do
see how they
you
work that
mean
way.
making a win condition when you need
What?
2020 keepers for the set 4.5?
Blind? They're calling you out?
I mean, he's
Well,
calling
I
me
haven't
out, but
seen.
that's okay. I mean,
Yeah, I haven't seen your
that's
set 5,
fine.
so I can't
Right
talk
now for
about set
set
5.
five,
But
that's
I can understand where you're coming from in set 4.5 though. Like a new player, you find a comp you like to play and just play it.
Yeah.
Like fuck it, who
Okay.
cares?
Hmm.
yeah. Well, even so, like let's not discredit one tricking, right? Because
No,
there
no,
are
no, no,
several
no.
win conditions when it came to just keepers, right? Like sometimes I wouldn't get a Zaya too,
Yeah,
right? So it's like, what do I do in that sense?
but talking about that, it's like I one tricking is fine. A lot of people hate it, but I think it's fine because it's what you like of the game. If let's say let's use the Kiyun playing mech and going first in NA, or something that happened in LAS like a couple days ago when we were recording. It's like there's this guy who only spammed Jax and he got rank 1. Why? Because he likes Jax. I'm like, okay, do it, enjoy it. It's like, as long as you're aware that you're playing only one comp by this pure reason that you enjoy it, be free. Like I don't share it because I don't because one trick is something that I'm personally bores me because I don't like playing the same thing over and over again. But if that's what people like, I don't think people should hate you for doing it, as long as you enjoy the game. And there's also
Yeah,
that, and you also have like to keep your ego in check, because there's a lot of people who are like, I'm a one trick boys, I'm rank 10 in NA, and then boys go out. But I still think I'm the best player, but boys get patched out, and you stumble back to Master Zero LP, and all the big mouth that you had, it's like throwing down the waist. So like, you have to learn how to be aware of what your playstyle and what your choices are as a player in TFT, basically.
yeah. I think you got a really good point where it's you really, I find, especially with a game like this, you really need to prioritize your enjoyment over anything else, because from what I've seen, from what I've talked to other people about, and from my own experience, this game can be extremely frustrating. And if you're not having fun from the beginning, it's really easy to just go into a downward spiral of tilt.
It's a very mental game. Like, yeah, you can say it has its multiple layers of skill, it has its multiple layers of luck. It's very mental, the game. Like, you have you are the one in control of whatever they throw at you. So like, if your mental is bad, like, don't play the game. Like, don't tilt you. Don't start the game thinking I'm going AF. Like, it's not gonna work.
So, Piehat, I actually want to like start talking more about TFT in the second end here, primarily more
Oh
about
no.
like your journey to becoming a world's qualifier. I want to know like what was the whole process like. But first off, like, did you ever think this would happen when you started playing
Nope.
TFT?
Never. 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 Like, the immediate answer was nope.
So
uh,
how did this like all happen? Like, walk me through it.
uh, would you prefer, I'm actually just asking, would you prefer me to actually talk how the process of qualifying is before talking, or because I usually do that, but I don't know, do you want me to explain the
Tell
process
me
of whatever?
everything. Tell me everything,
Okay,
brother.
so yeah, like just to show people how you qualify for LATAM, it's a little different from NA or U. It's like you have open tournaments and you have ladder, and the 128 people go to the one thing called the closed qualifier. From the 120, 128, we go to 90s to 64, and from 64 we go to 32. And then the 32 is like a playoff, so like four people get eliminated by day every day until you end up being the top four of LAS. And the top four of LAS play against the top four of LAN, the Latin American North, and top two go to World. So like, it's a very convoluted tournament. I don't really like it. I think personally, I think it's the best format of all the regions, and I'm not gonna hold myself against that. I think it's the best format we have, and I think the playoff are the best format we have. Anyway, what was your question? It was about
Yeah, how did this
going.
all started? So
Okay.
you went from playing Mario Tennis competitively. You're like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
I'm good to move
Mm-hmm.
on. You go
I
to
see.
TFT, and then you play for a few sets, and then like what? Like the next day, you just happen to be a world's qualifier, like the great pie
Uh,
hat, or
so I tried my luck on set three, and I ended up losing in the opens. I didn't even make it to top 128. Like, okay, it happens. And I didn't play that much of set 4 because of life, basically. And it was a busy time in my life, basically, pretty much. Was working and all that. And like, the first open qualifier happened. I'm like, okay, don't have really much, haven't really played that much. I'm gonna try my luck. And I tried my luck. I qualified to the close qualifier to the 128. I'm like, do I have good internet? I think I have good internet. Let's stream it. So a couple of my close IRL friends that just wanted to see. Like, okay, let's do it. I played. I won the top 128 tournament. I got first out of 128 and I qualified to playoffs. I'm like, okay, it's more than I ever would have wanted. My goal was see how far I can go, and I'm playoffs. So like, okay, nice. I'm top 32. And like, let's take it one day at a time. And I took it one day at a time. I wasn't really no one knew me. I wasn't really the best. I was never a challenger at that point. I'm like, okay, let's try it one day at a time. And of course, I have to admit that I, during the nights, I'm like, maybe it would be cool if I make it to the grand finals, to the top eight of everything, because top eight wins money. It would be cool to go to the top eight, to the grand finals, and make some cash. In fact, the thing I would like the most is to get third, to grab cash and not go to Worlds because that would be too much pressure. And I started playing the playoff, like one playoff at a time, one day at a time. I had a lot of anxiety. The anxiety was really big. And after the first day, which I actually did very poorly, I asked for some help from some people here. Balls, Chaos, and Jim Ray, and Bon Apple Tea, I believe, were the four that helped me that day and make me realize my mistakes. And I'm like, okay, I know the things I do poorly. I'm gonna try to play it. But at the same time, the playoffs were on the evenings, and in the mornings I was writing my final essay for a place I used to work with. So it was basically I was working in the mornings, playing in the evenings. I didn't have much time to practice. So like, of course, nothing was going my way, right? Like, there was nothing in the story that I just told that would say, okay, he's dedicating himself 100% to the game. He's pretty much secure to go. Because no, it was just one more thing in my life. I just kind of happened, and then I ended up making it to day 2, and then day 3, and then day 4. I hurdled a couple of games, but I actually played quite well. I actually won. I was the guy who won the most games out of everyone in the playoffs. Like, it was very good. And I got to made it, established a game plan, walked through it, and made every day one at a time. I clutched it out on day 3. I clutched it out on day 4, and I ended up really comfortable to going to the grand finals. And as I said, I didn't ever expect to go to Worlds. I was like, I'm achieving for a third, because there are 2 people here that are like top 3 people of Latin America. And I'm here, so I'm like, okay, let's try my best. And I randomly got there. I got to Worlds. I remember the first game went well, the second game went well, the third game went well. The fourth game went so, but I'm like, okay, let's close it out on a high note. And I randomly, that game I'll never forget, because that game I had a Yasuo 2 with Deathblade, Last Whisper, and all that. My plan was to go level 8 and roll for Slayers. But I just pressured on lobby, like I got in the zone, and I got fast. Went fast 9 in like 5-3 or 5-5, and I got a Samira chosen. I'm like, okay, I think I'm making it. And I just played out. I just tried calmly, tried to not overreact. Then I saw this course and I blew up. And I'm like, there were 2 reactions. The first one was, I made it, okay. And the second one was, oh no, I made it. It's like, oh no. Because
So,
because as I said, it was a game I tried for fun, and I made the tournament just to try my luck and see where I could end up with. I never expected to be this at this place. I'm like, oh shit.
you said like it didn't look like someone who was really dedicating themselves towards the game, but
Mhm.
in my mind, to me, that sounds exactly like what you were doing. And I think like the reality of it is that we're not all in a position where we can just drop everything in our lives to pursue
Mhm.
a craft, to pursue a dream, to pursue a cause. And like it's I don't want to call that like the American story, but I'm gonna say like
Wow, the
I would
American
say
dream. That's what I
that's the
achieved for.
that's the equivalent of what I think is like if there was a gamer version of the American dream, that's what I would call it.
I'm
Because
I'm I'm
we
the American dream of gamers.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, for real,
No,
right? Like you're doing your school in the morning, and then you're gaming at a tournament to qualify for Worlds in the evening. Like if that's
like
not dedication,
I was working actually. Excuse me.
well, even
I was
even worse,
working.
right? Even
Yeah,
worse because you can dick off in school, right?
yeah.
When you're working, you're spent, you're tired,
Yeah, I
right?
I, re- I like that. I mean, that's like, if there's one thing I always take out of my story per se, it is that, like I said, there was nobody. No one knew me. I was like a random guy who was never top 10, who has happened to have a good streak and actually got into the place, who was decent and actually made it. And it was very inspiring too, because a lot of people actually talk. Well, not a lot, but a couple people came to me and saying, and it meant a lot to them that someone who wasn't up there in the pedestal, high up there in the church, say like the people that we worship, like the top players, they like that someone who wasn't there made it this far. Even just getting to top 8 was like a huge achievement, a huge moral boost for everyone. For a lot of people for like me, who haven't been really that at that place. So it's really cool. It was really pretty, to say it like that. Go ahead, Lux. Flame me.
Uh,
Do
no,
it.
I feel like people, a lot more players relate to you than per se like this top streamers, right? Because like we're all nobodies technically, and then you're
Mhm.
like that embodiment of a nobody being a god. You know what I mean? And that's what I love about it, and that's what I love about you so much. Is like no one knew who we were, but then because we put so much time into the game, we enjoy that. We'd reached to a point where it's like, look, now everybody knows who I am. You know what I mean? And that's so cool about it. And that's why I enjoy like watching you play a lot more compared to like a top streamer kind of thing. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Thank you. That's very kind. I really like the words. I didn't expect you to be so wholesome. I was expecting something
Yeah,
cringy.
I
I'm
was
just
not
kidding.
expecting wholesome
I'm just
flex.
kidding. I really like that. Yeah, it's basically that. Is what I'm getting very emotional here. It's basically what moved me into the game. It's like a game I love, a game I really like. I like playing. So I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. Let's just take the chance and see how far. And see whatever the fuck happens. So like, if I don't make it, and no one really has any expectations. I'm like, I don't care. And since I was there, people were like, "Who is this guy? He shouldn't be there." Like, it's okay. I'm just chilling, minding my own business. People are gonna hate. People are gonna call me a high roller or a Samira whisperer, which I like. That term I actually like. But I'm like, yeah, I'm just here having fun, trying to stop.
You know, when I'll be honest with you, when we started this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody always asked us who was on the guest list. I
Mm-hmm.
guess people wanted to like test the waters and see how legitimate we were actually trying to be with this. And
Mm-hmm.
there's some people who are still like, I'm not sure if they're genuinely busy with their lives. I'm gonna give them the benefit of doubt and say they are, but I'm sure there's some people who still question whether this podcast is worth their time to come on, which I totally understand because we got a long way to prove ourselves, right? But when
Yep.
we were starting, people would always ask, "Who's on your guest list? Who's coming on the podcast?" And whenever we mentioned Piehat, they would always lose their minds. They would always say, "Hey, my boy!" They were always genuinely happy to hear that you were going to be on the show. And since then, like I've always been looking forward for this recording. So I mean, uh, your accomplishment from everyone that I've talked to is huge. Everyone regards you in a really huge way, right? And for me personally, right, I think that's fucking great what you've done because I think for a lot of people they feel like they need to drop everything and get signed and play the
Mm-hmm.
game 24/7 to even have a shot at being up there on the stage, right? And that's
Yeah.
something that I find myself um, being a little bit more concerned with, honestly, as I do this podcast more and more, because I'm starting to realize that maybe we just kind of have very toxic beliefs within our community, right? I'm at this point now where I've reached out to like healthcare professionals. I actually got in contact with a esports healthcare organization, right, to just like start talking about how we can take better care of ourselves and how we can achieve better gaming life balance. Because I think there's this idea that we have to grind our faces off into nothing, into dust, right, before we're ever like actually worthy enough at a shot. But I think in your case, like to hear your story, that sounds like the exact opposite. You know, it sounds like a regular guy who just had a regular life, had other opportunities, other responsibilities to take care of, but still loved the game. And as we discussed, you know, in the first half of this of the show, it's like that shows in your ability to learn and your ability to see your mistakes and improve upon them. And even when you thought you had a chance, you reached out for help, right? You reached out to all those guys in in the rat server. People
The
who aren't in the
rats.
rat server are they're not gonna know, but you know you reached out to your friends to help you out. And I think like there's a lot of beauty and nobility in that. And I think you really embody the type of gamer that I aspire to be.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to be with like I who I am as a person because I like authenticity, and I'm usually like as you can see, and probably people have seen me in the general chat or whatever. If when I was more active, I'm usually this is who I am, and like, I don't hide it. I easygoing, very accessible. I don't I dislike when people are, no, I'm too busy. I'm above you. You cannot. I hate that. I hate ego. I hate it so much. I think it's the worst thing that, and I always despise it, which is why I never try to be that way. For example, but I guess, yeah, it's on one hand, it's like being like a good person in every aspect of life, and I think it carries a lot of weight because I didn't, when I qualified to Worlds, I didn't do it with my scene backing me up. Latin America didn't back me up because at the time I know by first hand, and I don't blame not I don't blame them for it. That when we were going doing the grand finals, they were doing their math. So I could, so what score should I do so I don't qualify, and the favorite qualifies, which is completely understandable. I probably would do it again. I would do it myself if I'm rooting for someone and that someone is struggling in points. Like, it's fine. But yeah, I wasn't doing it being represented by Latin America in general. I was doing it represented by my friends, both IRL, both in Discord, and a lot of other places. So like, I just did it in that regard. I didn't. In fact, speaking of the sport, the teams are signing up. I got reached on to be part of a team, and basically stated, I'm done with this after Worlds. I don't want a long term thing because I don't really want to do that. It's not my interest. I think it's gonna turn this into into a chore. I don't remember how to pronounce it, but or a full
No,
time
you got a chore, yeah.
chore or a full time thing that's gonna drain you, and that's not something I'm looking for. And on the other hand, speaking about the things that you said about the personal belief and all that, it's just mental block. It's like the joke that we as in the writer community say that, haha, we're writers, but we always make a joke of how we never write, and how we're bad at writing, or how we're not achieving anything because we haven't published anything, because we are constantly repeating ourselves that we don't write. So like the same process happens for the game. So like if you continue, I seen I'm also very bad at it, but if you constantly say to yourself, I haven't done anything that is worthwhile, or I don't think my place is good enough, or like you said on the first part of the podcast, I don't think I'm qualified to do this or to say this. You're just gonna put a stop. You're gonna crash into a wall. And you're gonna not gonna improve. You're gonna increase. I'm like, yes, wholesomeness, being a nice guy with no ego, or trying not to like stop yourself. Like I do that a lot, and people who know me closely know how much I stop myself in my tracks because it's just who I am. Unfortunately, and I need to fix that. But trying to change those things is like something very that a lot of people can do, and a lot of people who are in like already in like in worship status, like the high streamers, can actually try to try to approach because it's the best thing we can do. I don't think we need more egos in the community.
Yeah,
No, no,
it's
no flame to them. No flame to them. Of course, they can do. They can. Some people ego is good for some people, but not for me.
ego is something that's becoming more and more nuanced to me as I've been trying to take this profession more seriously. Right. So I'm actually really trying to make a pivot in my career, in my professional career, and move on into gaming, and primarily within like the uh, psychology of gaming, right? And what's interesting is like I agree with you with ego. I think that in a lot of cases for a lot of people, ego is the enemy, right? I feel like our egos stop us from doing the things that we should do. I feel like our egos stop us from treating each other like humans, like we talked about, at the very beginning of like anonymity and online communities. But also, what's interesting is that if you look across the board of top performing athletes, their egos driving them is one of the most prominent things. I mean, you could look at Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, and their egos are really like this insatiable furnace, that drives them. And it almost gets to the point where it doesn't matter how many championships they win. It doesn't matter what their accomplishments are. They're still driven to go for more. And that also comes at a price too, right? I think a lot of people I think a lot of people have misconceptions about drive in general. Like, for example, I'm somebody who is classified as a workaholic, and a lot of people see that and they say, wow, that's really great. I wish I had the drive to work all the time. And I tell them, like, it's not all rainbows and sunshines, because it's almost like I have a void in myself that doesn't get filled. And even when I do work, it's not like it's not actually fixing that void. I'm just trying to fill it up. And it's almost like this dark presence of like, I need to work. I need to do things just so I feel good about myself, right? So I think it's a very nuanced puzzle. And sorry if I derailed in some weird direction, right? But I think you're right that we need to be very cautious, conscious. Wow, we need to
Conscience.
be very aware
Conscience.
of our
Yeah.
egos, right?
But ego is fine. Like ego is fine to a point because ego also equals confidence, and you need confidence. But at some point, where's the line where you are overconfident and the ego becomes a negative effect and you step over people? That's like the thing that it's a very thin line. It really depends on everyone how they approach games or success. This has a lot to do with how you see success, and that psychological thing is basically what decides how your ego is shown to the world. Because not having an ego is doubting yourself all the time, which everyone has an ego is normal. I think we should normalize having one, but having it in a negative way, or an overconfident narcissist, or whatever you other term you want to do, I cannot use right now because my ego is sometimes lax.
You've hit all the words. You've hit all
just
the great
it just
words.
just depends, I guess.
It really does. It really does. And the interesting thing about the ego, uh, if you're into reading, one of my favorite books is called Social, and it's written by, I believe he's a neuroscientist. His name is
Hmm.
Matthew Lieberman. And the idea of social is that some animals have grown fangs and poisons and wings as their survival mechanisms. For humans, it's the ability to be social creatures, right? And throughout his book, basically, uh, what it ultimately comes down to is that the difference between our brain and a monkey's brain is this chunk of brain right here, like behind your third eye, like in the middle of your forehead, and it's called the prefrontal cortex, right?
Yeah.
And the prefrontal cortex has shown to be active when you hear what somebody else thinks of you as a person, right? So that is to say that our egos are actually hardwired into us neurologically in our brains. Like it's not just some abstract concept that we have; it's actually a function of our brain. We have a large mass of our brain dedicated towards our egos, because the idea of it is like when you had like a tribe, right? And let's say like you made a spear. If somebody thought that spear was really good, they tell you, and what happens in your brain is that you get all these dopamine hits and from all these compliments. And what happens in your brain is you start to brainwash yourself, and you start to believe like, I make really good spears. I am now spear guy, right? And what happens now is because of that loop, and you're almost like self brainwashing. You take on the responsibility to create spears for the whole tribe, right? So it's super interesting that it works in that way for a I don't want to say like primitive, but for like a young tribe, like that's the social survival tool that we've built, right?
But
But now, like,
it is primitive. Like, don't be scared to do that because validation is a drug, and drug is something that moves the chemical processes of your brain, and that's very primitive. And it's not bad to say it like that. So it's like you said, very deep into our core. So it's
yeah,
fine. It's fine to be
yeah.
primitive.
Thank you, I appreciate it, right? And when it comes down to it, now it's like where does this have place in our society where it's grown up to be this mature, right? And I guess this could like loop back all the way to our previous discussions at the beginning of like uh, anonymity and just like not being a general dickhead on the internet and to other people, or how easy it is. But I guess like within the context of being like a competitor, right? Like actually in tournaments and being at the top of the top. I'm curious, like, what do you think like there are any shifts that need to happen mentally or egoically or personality wise, like from your experience? Like, what is it like playing at that level, and what are the people like playing at that level? Because for someone like me, I'm just like a regular guy, so I don't know what these people are like. So I'm just curious. I think you muted yourself.
Oh, I am mute. That sorry. That's why I usually don't mute
Oh,
myself.
that was so funny.
That's all right.
Yeah. Well, as I was saying, this very good thing is that we're not recording our faces, so you can see me do the silly thing of noticing that I messed up. That's good. It's the great part of not being on camera. But anyways, I was saying, I think there's like a little story before delving deep into it, because the first day of the playoff when I went bad, basically when I went like 1775 or something like that. I posted on Twitter. I'm like being negative and all that. Like it's kind of bad, but that. And I remember there was this guy who is called Calcifer, which is the LATAM representative of LASET, of Set Free, which he was one of the two representatives. He approached me and said, "Hey, you don't have to be like that. You need to try to believe in yourself and you can do this." Like I just handled those words. Those words like resonated on me. Plus the reassurance of my friend saying, "Hey, just believe that you can do it. See what happens." So like probably the first change in mindset is that the ego change of going from not thinking that you can make it to maybe I can make it, and let's see what happens. Let's believe it. Let's believe it for a second. Fake it until you make it, or something like that. And yeah, after that, and when I made it to Worlds, the mentality has to change, because it's not fake it until you make it. It's more of a okay, I made it. I have to prove myself. I deserve to be here. That's a very toxic mindset to be in, but that's mindset I was in. Like, okay, I have to prove that I can make it, that I deserve this spot. Against all odds, against everyone thinking I shouldn't be there. That's a lot of pressure, of course, as you can probably imagine. Very, that wasn't a very healthy month.
That's a big chip to hold on your shoulders, right? Because
Yeah.
not only are you trying to prove yourself, but now you're trying to not let your region down.
And even then, it's like I know people didn't have expectations of me because they also told. And of course, it's not something great that you would like to hear, but a couple of high elo people told me that. But yeah, it's more of as I'm someone with a lot of doubts. I doubt myself a lot, and I always think that I should uh, force me to go to the higher standard possible. And for me, it's like, for example, let's say like this like, phrase, and probably sums up my feelings right now is I should feel that I've achieved I should feel that I have achieved things, but I don't feel it that way. That's how I felt it at that moment, and that's how I feel right now. Basically, after all, that's all I felt. It's like I should be proud of this place, but I'm not. I don't think I've achieved anything, which is kind of wild to think if you think about it. But yes, getting into that and fighting your own doubts and your anxiety and the confidence issues and all that is because I'm not because I came from nowhere. In the end, I didn't came from the background of I'm a proven top TFT player. I'm a nobody that people think that he's gonna go 24th out of 24 because he messed up in a couple of scrims because his mental started going down and a lot of things happened. It's like it was very hard mentally to balance it out. And I don't think I ever balanced it out. I didn't never got to a point where I was like Okay, I think I'm confident with myself. I'm in peace with myself. I don't think I ever got there. I should learn. I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot of myself in that process, but at the cost of a month of mental health. So,
You know, it's the conversations like these that pushes me to do this more,
hmm
because I feel like there is no real platform for, especially for TFT, but I think in general, I
hmm
don't think there's a real platform for gamers to really talk about these things. And you might look down on yourself and say, you know, I should feel a lot better about that accomplishment, and I should feel a lot more proud and happy about that accomplishment. But through the research that I've done and through the work that I've done in my life, that makes a lot of sense to me, because there's a lot of people who believe that once they hit a certain apex, that's it. Like that's all the problems will go away and then they've made it, right? And once they hit that goal, a lot of the times what happens is that they're no longer satisfied with even just hitting the goal, right? And I'm not saying I have answers for you. I'm not saying I think you should feel this way or that way
well, I'm
about it.
not expecting that.
It's,
Don't worry about it.
but I think these are really important conversations that we need to have, right?
Yeah, I think it's yeah because it's a lot of things can go on in your mind, and really depends on the people and how each and every individual and how they handle things and how they handle their own standards, their own vision of success, their own cycle of validation. For example, there's a lot of things that go through everyone's mind, and I personally don't mind talking about them because I've always tried to be very open with what I feel because I'm gonna implode if I don't. Uh, which sometimes gets on me venting a little more than I would like to, and
Yeah,
it's just finding a balance, I suppose.
yeah.
Yeah, it's very much that. It's just talking it out.
Well, I appreciate it because I know how hard it can be. I'm somebody who doesn't like. I
Oh
have
yeah.
a lot of problems opening up. I'm very like steel doors, right? I'm
hmm
very like iron gate, right? And you know, when we talk about esports in general, right? I feel like for people who are not gamers, it's really easy to dismiss this entire genre, because it's like, oh, they're just staring in front of a screen, right? But when you really start to peel back the layers of it, yes, we are just sitting at a screen or a computer or at a chair. Yes, this is not a extremely physically demanding sport. However, the difficulty I think really transfers over into the mental, right? Where it becomes a case of there is no off time. There is no downtime, right? Like for professional football, right? You can run as many drills as you want, but it's very hard to put together like a scrim, right? Whereas when it comes to like esports, it's like ladders open 24/7 aside from when it's being patched, right? There's so much pressure for, I think, in the back of your mind of like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. That's most times like I wonder and I worry for a lot of people who are taking gaming competitively, as much as I love it, right? And I feel like we just need more conversations around this, really, to start what needs to happen for this to transform into what's going to help people in the future, help people now, and actually legitimize what we're trying to do here, which is professional esports, right?
Yeah, we always have to. The moment people see this as another activity that requires people developing skills and climbing up, is the moment that is normalized. Is the thing. Is the moment that everything's gonna be better. It's like as I'm saying, it's not something so hard. It's just a cultural mindset that needs to change. So it's like there's not much to do other than wait a little bit. and just try to work it out and just continue and continue and continue and do it and do it and do it, because that's basically it's one more thing that you try to perfect.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I so like on this tangent, I want to ask you like
Mm-hmm.
how did it feel to play with some of the best? I
Oh,
mean, it's
like
not only
no.
did you have to deal with pressure, but is there
Oh,
like a moment where you realize like, wow, I'm actually playing with this guy? Like,
I mean, of course, there are people that I looked up on, and I'm playing against them as equals, and that's always feels pretty good. But not really. I wasn't really intimidated, by anyone, because it's a TFT game. I'm watching it and against people in a computer. But I will say that playing those games are the most fun I ever had on TFT, and that's a reason. I personally have never been a fan of ladder. Ladder bores me, like really bores me. And tourneys, I love tourneys because there's a lot of competition. And playing the scrims and playing the worlds against them were so fun. But it got to a point where you stop. You, I mean, at least for me, because I usually, as I've stated before, I hate people putting pedestals or worshiping them. I see them as another people who are good at the game. So like, at some point, you're like, okay, I'm playing against these people. This is cool. This is fun. Playing against good people of all the world, which is something I never do. I play with Chinese people, I play with Korean people. That's very cool. I don't have the opportunity to do that because I don't have an account in China or Korea, and I will never have because I don't have a residence. So like, it's very fun to do this. And that I wouldn't say the pressure there wasn't any real pressure on seeing a name and being scared of that name. It was like, oh, cool, I'm playing some games with these people, and I'm having a lot of fun because this is the most fun I think TFT can ever be. And I think after that, ladder became just monotonous and boring, and I hate it until now. I still hate it, but I think I like that. I like that type of thing. That's why that's the thing I like the most about the tournament and the preparation and all that. It's very
yeah,
cool.
I, I definitely believe that you're not alone in, in that feeling of ladder. Uh, I know for a lot of people, like when Set 5 started,
Hmm.
they would get like challenger people in their lobbies, and they they would like freak out and just be like, it's Nate. And but it's cool to
Yeah.
hear that you had this that motivated you, right? It's really cool to hear that. Um, in your opinion,
Hmm.
what are the differences between ladder and tournament play? I'm really curious about like tournament meta, because I've heard discussions and ideas about it, but I think you're probably the most qualified, I think, out of anyone I've talked to talk about like tournament meta. So
uh, the first thing I could say is that in tournament people actually care. So like people are actually trying. In ladder you can autopilot all the time and just do whatever. Of course, you can do that in tourneys, but and of course you can try hard in ladder. It's never the same. Never, never, never the same. And tournament is cool by the sense that you can get punished a lot. You can innovate a lot. You can. There are things that are, for example, the very simple concept of pressure and tempo. It's something that you don't see on ladder because yeah, ladder has its own tempo. Everyone rolls at 3-2 or 4-1, 4-5, 5-1, very flow charty. There are very few people that actually change it up. But for example, I still remember this one of the screams we had, one of the scream days we had. That the meta got so aggro that at some point it was at 2-3 we had 4 people level 5. At 2-6 we had 2 people level 6, and at 3-1 everyone was level 6. So that level of adaptation to the pressure is amazing, and I think it's something that lacks a lot of ladder because of course you're not gonna do that on ladder. In ladder, if you see someone, and probably a lot of people can relate to this. If you're just like just playing autopilot and just normal, and you play a 2-3 with someone that is level 5, you're gonna be like, why is he level 5? Or you're gonna rant a second before coming back to your senses because that's not something that happens in ladder, for example. It's very cool, very cool. And as I said, it also people build stronger boards. Usually, people know how to build stronger boards for a reason. There was this time that I still remember it. I'm not gonna say names. So there was this guy was his first game in a tournament scrim, and he went eighth at 4-2. Like he died at 4-2 because the boards were just that strong. Like that's
Oh
amazing.
shit! Oh
And
shit!
he's a top TFT player just
Yeah.
because the tempo is so different. And yeah, you can do things in ladder that you cannot do in tournaments, and you can prep in tournaments in a way you cannot do in ladder. For example, this is I'm talking too much. I'm sorry, but
No, this is
I'm
great. Keep going.
I'm gonna
You
use
can
the
tell by my smile. I'm loving
yeah,
every second of
I'm
this. This
gonna
is
use the
great.
example of the playoffs. And two examples. The first example was I was top 24, I think. No one plays Veigar. I'm gonna try Veigar because why not? And I love Veigar because no one plays Veigar, and it started being a really cool tool. Or for example, in top 16, I believe it was, I went six on the first game, I think. And I go wash my hand, or second one, I don't know, wash my hands, grab some water, and while I'm thinking to myself, I say, huh, no one here is playing Brawlers, no one here is playing Diesel. Let's try to do that. And next game, the next couple of games, I did that. That was my plan, and I did it, and everything went well. So you can plan accordingly. Like you can see the people that scout lobbies and plan accordingly. Say, I can go this, or that. But probably the best example I have is on the finals of Latin America. Hold up, let me drink some water for a second. I'm talking too much.
Yeah, take your time. I'm loving this.
Okay, so for context, it was at the time where keepers were just starting to pop into the meta, and there was the time it happened 2 days after Aegon dominated everyone with Spirit Sharpshooters, and everyone knew that Spirit Sharpshooters were like, oh, this is very good. So like I went into the grand finals thinking having three questions. It was the best prepared I've ever been for a tournament, by the way. So like three questions. One is anyone playing Spirit Sharpshooters? Should Because I was considering playing it, but like I'm gonna let it happen. The second one was how many Cannon players are gonna be in the lobby? How many Kale players? Because LAN people play Kale a lot. Let's evaluate that. And the third one was what's the board state at level 7? What's the tempo? So on the first game I chose to play Veigar because Veigar is a very simple comp. You can play it at level 7, you can reroll, and you can use it to scout. And I played a game of Veigar just to scout the lobby because I'm never gonna be contested. It's a very autopilot comp, so did that to evaluate and research the how the game was playing. And after that game, I'm like, okay, I can fast eight every game and play Slayers and be rewarded. And I did it. I played it. The next 4 games, I just played strongest board, fast aided, played Slayers, played Samira, and since I always had like 50 gold because I knew how the lobby worked, I could just take advantage of that. So like the tournament preparation or just basically pressuring in tournaments something so much fun. And just a simple issue of okay, this is a weak board, but I need to kill 2 units, or I need to kill 1 unit, or I remember this like in 1-2 you grab a random chosen. In ladder I will pick this chosen, but in tourney I have to save HP, so I'm gonna play it. Like those type of choices of decision making that you have to do because the lobby is so high skill and so easy to pressure you on your mistakes is why I love tournaments. It's taxing. It can be exhausting, but that's the cool part of it. And that's my monologue of why tournament is always going to be better than ladder. Thank you for coming from my tech to my tech talk.
No, I love that. I love that so much. And for me, everything that you've just said really encapsulates the beauty of TFT. And it almost breaks my heart that people don't experience this during ladder because it's taken me a while to get here, and I'm definitely not the best player, but that's how I see almost every lobby, right? Like almost every lobby, I am trying to scout like it's a tournament, and I'm trying to make decisions like it's a tournament. And it's interesting to me that there are players who won't pick up units because it's not the ideal unit for their comp, or there are players who won't smash items, won't slam items because it's not the ideal items to slam, and they're just hemorrhaging, just losing a crap ton of HP. They're not scouting, they're just focusing on how the game doesn't want to give them this particular unit. And everything you said for me like encapsulates what I think TFT should be, which is analyzing, scouting, adapting, right? Making decisions even though they might not be optimal to adapt towards the current state, right? Um, so I'm super pumped that you said all those things, because for me, those are the things that I love personally, and maybe this is like planting the seed for me to start playing in more tournaments now.
I mean, I think this is a. I know the podcast is hosted by is part of the TFT Discord, but you can just try the tournaments that they do every Friday and just test your luck and see what happens. Since
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no, and you can, yeah, you can push ladder, you can join tournaments, you can do whatever. I probably think there's an open tournament in the NA. I think I don't know if it changed or
yeah.
not. It used to be
Well,
one for the qualifier, so you can just try test your luck and see where it takes you. Like the
since you
worst
brought
thing that
that
you
up,
lose,
yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
like the worst thing you lose is like 5 hours
Yeah, yeah.
that you are gonna spend playing ladder anyway. So like,
Yeah. Since you brought it up, I'm curious on how you think the best tournaments could be hosted or work, because I'm part of the events team. So one of the things that I'm doing actively in the background is trying to bring our tournaments and improve them and get them up to snuff. Especially like within the context of like getting sponsorships and looking at like building really good prize pools. But I'm curious from your perspective, like what do you think is like an ideal tournament format or scenario? Like how do you think we can improve our events?
an ideal tournament would take like 4 or 5 days to manage. So like, it's not gonna happen. It's like we know that like the resources and the human resources and the time spent is not gonna happen
If
because
it
this
did, if it
like
was, so granted we had the budget, granted we had the people, right?
like if it had the budget and the people, it would probably be a mix of a Swiss format with a double elimination format. I think the double elimination is great because a lot of tournaments that even happen in a lot of days, you lose in the first lobby and you cannot bounce back. And I think double elimination is something very important to the game as a tournament, as a competitive format, and as a whole because you can learn how to bounce back between game. For example, there was the Lalan, I think it was a British guy, last set, went 8 on the grand finals, but on the second, because he went to double elimination, he mentally reset and went 1-1-1-1-1. So, like, you can do that. Like, I think a format should make it in a way that you should cycle against good players and have chances to, and not make your game die, your tournament hopes die in like 2 games or whatever. Well, there was one more thing, but I cannot remember. There was one more thing I was gonna add. You could make a league, I guess. We in LATAM have a league, which I think is very cool. Like an active league of 10 days, people playing against each other, and consistency, and people on the top are like rewarded. Of course, they're winning the league, of course. So
Yeah, that's actually one of the models that I've been looking at, because one of the problems that we have right now is that the participation in the tournaments are a little inconsistent. Like we have people who will drop out, who won't play the full like 5 hours. We have some people who have never played a tournament before, so they have no idea like what's going on.
mhm,
So I was trying to play with this idea of like we start a league, and then every month, 2 months, whatever, every set, like we'll actually have like a full tournament, and
yeah.
then the top performers of the league will actually be invited to participate, and that way we can actually like make sure the competition is good, you know
Mhm.
what I mean, but also ensure that we have the reliability to like make it actually work. But then there's also problems with like time zones and two, and that
Yeah,
makes it a little difficult. But
like,
uh,
and also you need the motivation for the people because I think we're getting to a point where TFT players are starting to get tired of joining tournaments pro bono, like not getting anything, getting anything in return, and it's it, it's understandable. Like I'm also that's why I'm also like taking my time with and only choosing a couple of tournaments to go for because it's a lot of time investment for little reward sometimes.
what's
Because
the
and
what's the
yeah,
average what's the average prize pool?
I have no idea, and but I don't think I'm the most qualified guy to talk about that.
Just out of what you've seen, just out of your experience.
Like the most common is zero, and maybe so like there are a couple of tournaments with like 50 or $100, but it's like
Yeah,
and you win it like the top two or top three in a tournament of
yeah,
128 people. So
yeah.
like, and for example,
That's yeah,
we have Smash, and Smash gives a lot of people money. So like the top
yeah,
16 or whatever,
yeah,
because they have the
yeah.
infrastructure to do that.
So I was actually talking to do I call him a friend of mine? I made
An
acquaintances with somebody
acquaintance.
who's I made acquaintances with somebody who I want to call my friend just in case he's listening, you know. But
Oh,
I talked to somebody who's been running collegiate esport events for the past 4 years. He's been involved with PAX for multiple years, and he's actually working with PAX on this year. And he was telling me the hurdles that we have in TFT in actually becoming like a esport, right? And what's interesting is that the biggest problem he told me is that inherently when it comes to TFT and especially in the way that it's being casted, there's never a good versus bad scenario. So like for example, you brought up Smash, like in the Smash scene, there's always somebody that you're rooting for and there's always somebody that you want them to lose, right? So whether it's like Mango versus Hungry Box, right? Whether it's like Mewtwo King versus I don't fucking know. I'm not that super into the Smash scene. I sorry, I won't pretend that I am,
yeah,
right?
LATAM or
But
some
it's
shit.
okay. Don't worry.
you understand the concept, right? It's like
Yeah,
there's no good versus evil, right? So when it comes to like TFT and casting, it's like it would almost have to be like we would have to stick with one person's perspective throughout the whole tournament to really build that level of like I want them to win. I want them to win. Like to build those stakes, right?
that's the issue that competitive TFT need. That's the issue that they have, and because that was one of the questions that they made on the interview for the World, which was, "What does TFT need to be a competitive esport?" And I say they need storylines. Like
Yeah.
they actually
Ooh,
need
I like that.
like they need to develop storylines. Like for example, they do in League. Like this team is the underdog, or this guy is the up and coming mid laner who just started, and let's see how it goes. We need storylines in TFT for people to actually care, both
Yeah.
on the people and the tournament as a whole, because one, each person has its own narrative naturally, and two, every series has its own narrative, like organically. So people need to recognize that and actually take advantage of it for the engagement that it naturally will do on players that actually want to watch. And that's why if you see any tournament, you compare the numbers of the main broadcast and you compare the numbers to any of the other high yield streamers. The high yield streamer have more viewers than the official broadcast, and there's a reason for that. People are not
Yeah.
engaged.
Yeah. You bring up a really good point. Yeah. So hey, Piehat, we've been in here for almost 2 hours. I can definitely go for an hour more, but
You're
I'm gonna
kicking
start setting the motions.
you're kicking me out already. Okay, let's see how it
What a
is.
Come
host we
back for
have here.
episode two.
Okay,
Come back for
Did
episode
he
two.
already got what he wanted, and he's kicking me out.
I'm being outed. You're calling me out so hard. Piehat, for the individuals right now who want to make TFT a very competitive game for themselves, for the guys who are guys and gals, sorry, who are climbing ladder right now and trying to get better, what would you say are the top three things that anybody who wants to get good at TFT and maybe be a competitor one day should focus on?
The first one would be question why you're doing things. Like, don't play mindlessly. Don't follow as much as guides have value. Don't follow a guide. Like, actually evaluate why you're doing one thing, why you're doing this item. I hate the concept of best in slot or the concept of one strict call because that's not always gonna work. This is not a static game. Like if you constantly ask yourself why you're doing this or that, like it can probably can help you maybe not climb but be a better player because climbing and learning usually don't go side by side and you should focus on learning before climbing. The second one would be to not be scared of asking of help. Like people can help. Share options, share your thoughts. Don't be entitled. Going back to the thing you said on the start, like don't feel that you cannot be part of a conversation just because you are low elo or whatever you consider low elo to be. Just don't think that your word is like the best and actually discuss. And the third one is mentally like taking it one game at a time, not blaming the RNG because I think that's like 9 out of 10 times, probably 95 out of 100 times, the fault is not the RNG. Like the fault is actually you for not handling what the game gives you. So don't flame the game. Treat yourself nicely and actually try to manage every game one at a time without molding and actually believing that you can get to a higher rank if you put the effort and the mindset. Because if not, you're gonna struggle. You're gonna fight against the game, and as in any casino, the house will always win and you will always lose. So just don't fight against something that you cannot control. Just change your attitude, change your mentality, and maybe things can be better either in game or in life. But just do that.
Perfect, perfect. And for anybody that wants to be able to find you, get in contact with you, ask you any questions, maybe convince you to sign on a team.
That's not gonna happen for a bit. But
Where can they
uh,
find you?
I mean, Discord. I'm always accessible. You can talk to me in Discord, and I will always reply either late or soon or late. But I have Discord open all the time.
Cool,
Other
cool,
than
cool.
that, I have my Twitter and my Twitch, which I don't know if you need me to spell it out or you wanna post it in the
No,
description or
I'll
what
put it.
are
I'll
you
put it in
gonna
the
do?
description. This is just your time to plug in
Okay,
anything you want to plug in.
I
I
never
don't know if you got a
stream,
book coming
but
out.
I may stream at some point. But I stream in Spanish, so but I can answer in English. So you feel free to come by if I ever stream. So don't be scared of the Spanish. And no, nothing more. I usually post things around here on my Twitter or whatever to like or just talk about life. So yeah, I think I'm a very easy to reach guy, so don't be scared. I guess.
You're definitely one of the nicest guys I've ever met, and also one of the nicest guys who's pretty high elo, I would say. Piehat, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Look forward to having you back on episode 2, which is why I'm kicking you off preemptively now, giving you a little taste for you to want to come back and talk about more things.
I
Lux, do you
feel
have
like
anything to add before we sign off?
I feel like we should have done these 2 hours at 2 separate episodes. You're coming back for episode 3.
Oh yeah.
We'll talk about it. He's gonna start charging us soon. I can already see it in his eyes. He's thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Nah, it's
He's
fine.
like, prize pools are
His,
0, but podcast is infinite.
I
I
don't
can
know
see
if
the dollar
infinite.
signs in his
I
eyes.
don't know if infinite is the right word, but I'm always happy to be here. As I stated, I'm always happy to talk. So like, go ahead, be happy. I'm I'm a communicator after all, so that's what I do. I communicate, so I don't mind.
Well, thank you, man. These past 2 hours have not only been enlightening for me, but I know we've been spinning some really hard truths that I think the community and just gamers in general need to hear. So I appreciate you for coming on. Thank you so much. And for anyone who's made it this far, thanks so much for listening to us. Really appreciate all the feedback and support you've been giving. If you like us, just hit the like button, please. That gives us like Elo. That's like YouTube Elo. It helps out
It's
in
YouTube
the
Halo.
algorithm. It's
YouTube
YouTube
below.
Elo. That's what it is. Well, actually, it's like your subscribers is your YouTube elo. It's your YouTube LP, and your likes is like your YouTube MMR. So
You're trying
Yeah.
too much.
yeah, no, that's what it
He is trying too much. I just didn't want to say it, but thanks, Piehat, for like pointing it out
is.
and ruining his little, you know.
I can never do like a proper pitch. It's so someone always has to ruin it. All right. Well, that's it. Signing off. I'll catch you guys in the next one.